Hello and good afternoon. Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. It's good morning still, ladies and gentlemen, because it is 11:30. That's right, folks. We are going half an hour earlier. Fuzzy and I are not only giving you a 60-minute program for the first half of the Xbox lunch break special, we are going to be coming back at 12:45, 15 minutes before the IGN ID at Xbox event, which of course I'm not sure how long that's going to be. I believe it's about 40-ish minutes. It's 15 games, 15 plus games, plus 15 plus developers. We're going to get into it. I am not personally covering the Annapurna event that's happening after that. That is going to be something that we will discuss throughout the week. They are having their own event, which is pretty cool. But we are going to have two monster-sized topics to get into here. Apparently, ladies and gentlemen, people are fiending for Avowed, and I'm talking about the PlayStation community. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. There has been numerous articles regarding why isn't Avowed announced for PlayStation 5 as of yet. But I thought this game sucked, right? I thought it was mid. I thought it was, 360 days, because according to Game Rant, the Xbox 360 days kind of reminds them of Avowed in good and bad ways. And yesterday, if you're a fan of, and I like Game Rant, they wrote 3 consecutive negative articles in under 4 hours about Avowed. Pretty interesting stuff, but that's not the only thing that is going on. I have a tweet here from Dirt Griggity, which we will get into. And of course, who doesn't love Dirt Griggity? I mean, that guy is awesome. Of course, him, Shannon, the crew break it down every, on his podcast, as well as his single, which he does by himself, the Dark Man podcast, which is, again, he goes sometimes for 2 hours. Like, oh my God, I don't even know how the guy has a voice afterwards. But of course, we love him in the community, and he put out a tweet that's pretty damn interesting. And again, it's a bit salty, as you would expect from Dirk Riggedy, and that's why we love him. But we have the second half of the show, and it's a monster side topic, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be talking Elder Scrolls 6, and interestingly enough, I did get 2 pieces of very large information, one of which I've been sworn to secrecy, which I cannot talk about. I am waiting for clarification on when I could talk about it. There is another one that I can, in fact, not only confirm, but I can back up Ecstasies on a particular tweet that he put out regarding Elder Scrolls and a bunch of information. And it's very good. Again, I've been given the thumbs up to talk about it because it's pretty much out there already. And again, it's a rumor. It's not, a rubber stamp confirmation, but it is interesting nonetheless. But before we get to those 2 topics, we got to welcome in the best bald head in the business. There he is, ladies and gentlemen, Fuzzy Belvedere. How you feeling, man? Thanks so much for joining us early. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I feel great. Glad to be here with you. Man, a lot of interesting news, both on Avowed and Elder Scrolls, which I've always said, Elder Scrolls 6 for 26. So we'll see. But yeah, it's a great time to be a gamer. And the PlayStation crowd asking for Avowed, but then crapping on Avowed in the same breath. It's like, it's strange. Just strange. But we'll get into it. But man, so glad to be here. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Yeah, we're going to have a good one today.
Yeah, we're going to have fun with it. We're going to have fun with it. Again, 60 minutes, folks. First topic, 30 minutes. Second topic, 30 minutes. We're going to take a bit of a break, and then we'll come back at 12:45 to kind of start with myself, Fuzzy Belvedere. Mav from Fun Speculation should be joining us, as well as potentially 3-Bit, which would be really dope. And again, that's just going to be, we're going to, watch with you guys and gals on what's going to be shown. And I'm just wondering whether or not the Miles Morales character from the Spider-Verse films that was shown in the opening trailer for this ID at Xbox X IGN event will come to fruition in any way. A lot of people are like, yeah, it's probably just, an intern that, threw this in the trailer. And they may be right. IGN makes mistakes like that all the time. But I think where I kind of am holding hope that it turns into something is, one, I really like Miles Morales as a character. Yeah. Number 2, I really like that particular rendition from the Spider-Verse films. I really dig him as a character. He's much different from what Marvel has drawn him in the past, and I would love to see maybe a game that isn't tied down to PlayStation that Xbox players can actually play. That would be pretty dope. We'll see if that comes to any fruitions or not. But I do want to open up with, of course, the avowed rhetoric that's been going on. Now, listen, I will say this. I want to just congratulate the community. And I'm just talking about not the Xbox community. I'm talking about the gaming community. I want to congratulate you fine folks because this is one of those instances where you have a game come out like Avowed. There was a lot of hesitation and doubt as to if Obsidian could deliver this monster-sized RPG, right? Now, we know that they did with Outer Worlds. That was phenomenal. You know their history. Their history is stout. There's no doubt they are one of the best developers when it comes to Western RPGs on the planet. Let's call a spade. And Microsoft happens to own 3 of the best ones, which is absolutely incredible. Obsidian, in my opinion, one of the best purchases from that 2018 lineup. And again, I don't think they've missed on any of them when you consider what they have in development, what we've already seen from those teams that were announced as acquisitions in 2018. But like I said in many podcasts before, I do hold Obsidian to a very high standard. And I honestly, in my heart of hearts, believe that they are the Insomniac Games of Xbox Game Studios. That's the best compliment that I could possibly give them because Insomniac has been carrying PlayStation 4 and 5 for years, right? But Fuzzy, what's interesting is I got to give a shout out once again to Nico Muller. He is not only enjoying, loving, can't stop tweeting about Avowed like many of us, but him, like many people in this community, and this is where the congratulations comes into, we have been having so much fun. We've been putting out the posts. You've been putting out the videos with no spoilers. You've been putting your screenshots one after another. People are showing different builds. People are playing in third person with guns. People are playing in first person with magic. People are playing in third person and first person with swords and shields. And every time you see someone's gameplay, at least for me, and please chat, get involved here. Does it make you feel like you played the game wrong? Because I played in first person as a wizard. Like I started off in a fighter build. And by the way, I beat it. I beat it after 106 hours. I loaded back up a save from level 20 because thanks to Nico, he put out a video where there is an entire snow level. I never got there. So I was like, well, how the hell do you get there? We talked in some private DMs and said, boom, you just got to go here. I'm like, okay. I remember seeing some like an entrance to like an ice thing, but I never went towards it. I got sidetracked with something else. And I'm like, wait a second. I put 106 hours into this thing and I didn't get to the freaking snow level? Like, what is happening? And there you go, folks. That's why I started playing again, because currently there isn't a new game plus, which is fine. They'll get to it. Hopefully they get to the photo mode as well. They need to add a few things. But, Fuzzy, I want to go right to you. In front of me, again, thanks to Nico, he says, where were the gaming media articles asking for Spider-Man on Xbox? And this is such a great point. Listen, I get the Spider-Man deal. They have the rights for 100 games on PlayStation. Eventually, they'll get over to PC, just like Spider-Man, just like Miles Morales, and just like Spider-Man 2. But the interesting thing here is he has 4 particular articles on display where it talks about different publications. And again, we don't do the names thing here because we're not looking for a flame war. You can go and find this yourself if you're interested. Just type in Avowed PS5. 100 articles come up. Well, the 4 that he has are asking this. Is Avowed coming to PlayStation explained? right? They have to explain this to PlayStation gamers because, well, everything from Xbox has to be on PlayStation because Xbox doesn't matter, right? Xbox is trash. Xbox is mid. Another article: why Avowed isn't on PlayStation 5. PlayStation release status explained. Another one explained. Wow, this is pretty interesting stuff. Another one: will Avowed come to PlayStation 5 after its Xbox launch? Well, I would imagine at some point because they're going multi-plat, right? That's just their pattern. They've done it with Indiana Jones. They did it with Forza Horizon. And, I guess the cat's out of the bag. Another one. Big question. This is the big question. Is Avowed actually coming to PlayStation 5? The answer is, well, in the short term, probably. In the long term, I don't know how long this is going to be held off because, quite frankly, it's doing really well. Xbox has already confirmed that they are happy with the sales. We know that it's been charting on Steam. It was #1 around the world on its initial launch. People are buying the game. People are playing the game. People are upgrading. A lot of people waited on the upgrade because they weren't sure. But people like me who got the game for a review actually went out and still bought the $100 edition because I wanted the steelbook and I wanted that cloth mat, which, by the way, I'm having framed. So here's the thing, Fuzzy. It's the age-old question, right? We understand PlayStation is a bigger brand, right? They're at least in the top 10. I don't know where they're currently. The last time I checked, they were #7 as the world's most recognized brand. And there's a reason for that. I mean, listen, I know that a lot of us don't like PlayStation for one reason or another, but I do. I have a PlayStation 5, and I'm happy to own it. I really am, ladies and gentlemen, for things like Astrobot, for the next God of War. Like, again, the God of War supposedly has the trilogy remake going to be announced sometime next month. I'm there day one. That game is a decade old. I would love to see that remade, and I will buy that with open arms. But the one thing that I think that we don't get enough of from the press is asking when Sony is going to put their games on Xbox. So this Avowed thing is a bit perplexing, to be honest with you. Now, I don't personally care because I've already beaten it. I started playing through a second run, and I'm going to have 300 hours in this game before I'm done. There's no doubt about it. I want to experience everything. I want to get 1,000 out of 1,000 achievement. I'm almost at 600 now after beating it. What's your thoughts? I mean, just honestly, plainly, what are your thoughts on the consistency with why isn't it X game on PlayStation, but it's never in the reverse order?
I think some of it has to do with the blinders the gaming media has on. Some of them clearly don't care about objectivity, and they'll state as such. This is opinion based, blah blah blah. But I always try to look at things like, why not take a step back? If you're going to ask the same questions of X game from Xbox going to PlayStation, why not at least have the conversation about, why game from PlayStation going to Xbox? Like it's occurred with MLB, and yes, there's reasons why that occurred, with MLB being the driving force behind that. But outside of that, you would think in this age where a lot of this gaming media says, the same catchphrases of if everyone plays, we all win kind of thing. It's never brought to the forefront or to the table for conversation to say, hey, maybe Astrobot should come to Xbox, or maybe, Horizon Zero Dawn should come to Xbox. But you won't find those PlayStation fans that happen to be in the gaming media ever bring that out of their mouth, primarily I view it as a couple of reasons. One, they're afraid of whatever backlash from their current reader or fan base might, I guess cancel them to some extent, where they're not going to be paying any more attention to them. They may lose followers. There's that fear of it being kind of like a sacrificial kind of topic to bring up. And on the flip side of things, I think they're also equally afraid that Sony themselves might start looking at them differently in the sense of when it comes to giving them the free game codes. Because that's the one thing that we've kind of found out from people that have been behind the scenes in the dev department area, where if they're working for a dev and the critics are like, hey, can you send a PlayStation copy instead of a PC or Xbox copy? And that's 99, almost 99% of the requests that they get, as opposed to actively requesting Xbox. Like the only ones that do are Xbox centric sites. But you would think a more mainstream site would request for all copies, a PC copy, a Xbox, a PlayStation, and if available, a Switch copy. But they don't. They just go with whatever that particular gaming media person prefers as their platform of choice, kind of thing. So I think a lot of them are too scared to have that honest conversation, and they've already made up their mind that, well, Sony will never do it. Now, had you asked them if MLB would ever come to Xbox 10 years ago, they would probably say absolutely not. Even if MLB, made some sort of, query about it or whatever, they would have, hands down said, oh, there's no way that would happen. And now it's happening. I mean, even the, was it Sony San Diego studio that does MLB made a statement on social media like that, like, oh, it'll never come to Xbox years ago. And then it was like, I want to say less than 2 years later, they had to eat crow on that. But yeah, it's funny to me that conversation never comes up. It's funny to me that there isn't more of a conversation of, well, when is this particular PlayStation game coming to PC? Because that, at least from a likelihood standpoint, is probably the closer to occur. But they don't even want to bring up that. Like at this point, Gran Turismo should have been not only in PS Plus, but it should have already been on PC, just for the fact that if you want to expand your player base, I don't think you're going to sell any more PlayStations to sell Gran Turismo. Whoever wanted to play Gran Turismo on PlayStation already has their PlayStation and already has it. But I'm sure there's a good bit of, sim racers and racing fans in general that are on PC that aren't going to spend any more money on a console. They already have their sim rig. They already have, their 3 monitor setup and their racing seat and steering wheel and pedals. They're not going to spend $500 or more on a console just to hook to that. They would rather just have the software come to the hardware they already have. And that's like what Yoshida said more recently. That's them printing money. It would be an easy sale at that point, because you're not going to convince that person to buy the hardware because they would have already purchased it if they chose to. So selling them the software is the easy part. Sure, you only get 70% of it, but you would think that at that point, PlayStation would be, jumping for joy that that's, extra revenue that they really didn't have to work that hard to port. They have the porting studio, which that might be the limitation right now as far as the capability of that studio across their entire lineup. But at this point, they should also be considering hiring people within those studios that can do the work while the games are being made. That would save yourself the extra, cost of porting later. Plus, it would save you some of that advertising money as far as for a secondary launch. You could do everything in one launch, have all of the hype go at the same time, and more than likely influence more impulse buys at the current moment at the original release, as opposed to down the road, 6 months to a year later type of deal. But it never fails. And I know a lot of people have made this statement before that the gaming media has always been disingenuous with the statement of they want Xbox to compete. They don't want Xbox to compete. They want the illusion of that, but they really want Xbox to go away and just be a third party because they like the games. They don't want to be caught around their cool friends we've seen on like the Xbox platforms or whatever for whatever stupid reason. It feels that way. That's how they come across. It's like if they were to be caught with an Xbox controller in hand, oh, I was just testing out the new controller. Like, really? Why are you ashamed to, enjoy an Xbox game on an Xbox? But then when the game comes to PlayStation, oh, this is great. Finally we have this game and haha, suck it Xbox. But it's like, okay, so which is it? Is it that you're happy that the game came over, that you're, afraid to be caught playing on an Xbox? Or is it that you're just one-sided and only want stuff to come to PlayStation and not to come to Xbox? It just feels like, that selfish kid that wants to take his ball and go home kind of deal. Kind of feels like that's where a majority, not all, but a majority of the gaming media's mindset are. But that's just my take on it.
And it's a good take, but I wanted to add some additional context to this because you sit back and you watch, you listen. First of all, I'm watching my own footage. I'm like, God damn, that looks really good. I'm not gonna front. I'm a Magic using MF, and I love it where I've gotten so good where I'm switching between Gilmore's. I have a Lightning build and I have the Frost build, and I just started playing again. I reloaded a save from level 20, and I because at that point I hadn't respect my I still had half wizard, half warrior fighter. And I was like, you know what? Let me respect my thing. And I kind of the wands are doing ridiculous damage. Like when you really start to kind of put your mind into what you're doing and the build that you're making. Oh my, this is crazy. But sorry for the long-windedness, folks. Let me just get right back to the topic on hand here. So I had some thoughts, right? Now, supposedly, at one point or another, Xbox is getting new hardware. I was dead set on 26. Like, I really thought holiday 26, boom, they get new hardware. It's the anniversary, 25th anniversary. Let's go. And that actually still might happen. But we keep saying, when are PlayStation games coming to Xbox? I actually think that you're going to start to see, I don't think that happens anytime soon. There might be a select few. There might be one or two. You might get Lego Horizon, which I think is next month. I think it's March. Honestly, you're going to get that announcement. It's going to be like a blog post. Or you're going to get something from Xbox Wire that says, hey, great news. Lego Horizon on Xbox today. Game Pass, unlikely, but you never know. And even if I have to buy it, I'm going to buy it because I own every Lego game. But the move that I see Sony doing, not only because they're stubborn, but they're limited. And I'm not being disrespectful. When I say limited, ladies and gentlemen, they're limited in what their studios can do because of the backpedaling they've had to do in the last 12 months. Right? You got to remember, they have shifted ideologies from bangers that we know and love to gas games. 12 of them, 10 of which have been canceled in the last couple of years, right? There are still 2 living and breathing, supposedly. Helldivers did really well for them, both on PC and on PS5. Better on PC for sure, but they still sold some copies. There's no doubt about it on PS5. I bought one of them, and I'm happy to have done it. But interestingly enough, this is where they run into, they don't have enough studios to develop for PS5, PS4, which they have to do, PC, and everything else, right? So what I see happening is they will eventually go day and date on PC, at least. How long before that happens? I know that Mr. Siege, which by the way was in a car wreck, so I'm glad that he's okay. Broke a couple of ribs. He talked about it on social media. Mr. Siege, I don't know if you're listening, but we hope that you get a speedy recovery. Great community member, PlayStation guy, but really good dude. So, of course, he got injured. Nobody wants to see anybody injured. Hopefully, Detective Seeds does make a full recovery. Broken ribs ain't easy because there's really nothing you can do for it unless, just tape it up and let it heal. And every time you breathe, you're reminded that, shit, I got broken ribs. So, hopefully, he feels better. He actually put out a tweet regarding this particular subject where he believes that Sony is not going to go day and date on PC, that they're going to go maybe like stagnant 2 or 3 months. And he might be onto something. I mean, he's pretty locked in, that guy. He has a lot of good connections. So maybe he knows something that I don't. But this is where I think we run into a potential win for Xbox on a couple of levels, right? If this magic box that has been rumored to be this open source console, acts like a PC, but looks like a console, right? For people just like me, right, who don't want to get involved with PC gaming, I'm going to have this magic box that I just plug in and it goes. Well, if they do PlayStation day and date on PC, there you go. If you can get Steam on this box, along with Epic Game Store, Good Old Games, and of course, your Xbox games, then they don't need to port anymore. And maybe that's what they're actually waiting for. Because listen, let's call a spade here, folks. Sony is a billion-dollar company. They would love to be a $3 trillion company, but they're not. And even though they are a billion-dollar company, they still want to make money. And unfortunately, as we saw, there was an interview, which I don't have queued, and I will talk about this at some point this week because I want to go into depth with it. Matt Piscatella was interviewed by Greg Miller. Great interview, by the way, where he breaks down the specifics of actually who's buying the games. And you'll be very, and this is something we all know, man. I gave credit for about 15% of the populace being diehards. Folks, it's less than that. It's mostly a casual audience. Yeah. So I think what could potentially happen is you're going to get PlayStation games on an Xbox, but via this open source box like you do on your PC. Because and maybe Sony won't like that. And I don't know why they wouldn't, because everybody likes money. But I think that is why we don't hear, or we won't hear, about these potential ports. Like I said, I think Spider-Man 2018, I know you've heard me say this for years, is an easy one. It's an easy 5 to 10 million sales on Xbox, because I'll buy it again. And I'll 1,000 out of that for the achievements, because that game is brilliant. Honestly, still one of my favorites in the series, even though Miles, for personal things, edges it out, right? Yeah. But Insomniac is a great developer. I think that if they released them on Xbox, they would make bank. A lot of guys like me would go out and buy it. A lot of normies would get out there and buy it. And I think that is where I think this is going to wind up eventually going. But it is interesting, though. We come all the way back to Avowed, where the community is having so much fun with this, even at its 81 meta, which for some people is trash. Oh my God, 81 is garbage. I mean, 81 is pretty good. If you score that on a test and you bring it home to mom and dad, they give you a pat on the ass, right? They're like, oh, good son or daughter, you did good. I know I would. I mean, everybody wants a 90, but not always going to get a 90. Yeah. Any additional context, Fuzzy?
I think as far as when it comes to the Sony day and date, I think that in the short term is coming sooner rather than later. Just for the fact that Hiroki Totoki, being the money man, now being in charge of Sony proper, put in place Nishino, who's now going to be the head of PlayStation. They're more on the same wavelength of things. Nishino was pretty much on Team Hardware, which helped primarily because they exceeded, I guess, their expectations, even though they had a few adjustments on what they expected to sell. But that's the driving force. And until their software matches the performance of the hardware, there's probably going to be other avenues that they're going to test out to see how it works. One of those is going to be the divvying up of, what would be considered a whole game, kind of like what we saw in some of those leaks as far as Spider-Man 3. Maybe it's broken up into 2 and 3 parts, sell it at a slightly lesser price, but overall, if you buy all the parts, you wind up spending more than the 70. So then they get the amount of money that they wanted out of that, $400 million project, or however much that budget would be at that point. There's also going to be some things where they test more stuff on the Switch. Like, all things considered, I would be curious to see what the numbers were like overall with that game. I would not be surprised if it sold better on Switch, and then second, best sales were on the PlayStation, the worst being on PC, because it's not typically your PC chosen game. Like, if they had put it on like mobile devices and tablets, maybe it'd be a different story. If you could buy it at your Apple app store and put it on your iPad for the kids, then it'd probably do better, or just as well as it did on Switch. But I think they're going to try a few more things. And as the hardware for our cell phones and iPads and such get better and better, that means that there is a more of a likelihood that those could be alternative platforms that they can test their games out. But I think PC is the surefire winner with their some of their remasters, obviously, but as well as their first party new titles, as well as some of the follow-up sequels. So that way they don't have to rely on the purchase of the remasters as much to get to the sequel. But yeah, with Xbox on their next console, I know Sony is not going to be a fan of their games possibly being on that device through Steam. They already have, I guess, blacklisted a few games on GeForce, where if you're playing your GeForce now on the Xbox, then somehow you don't have access to a handful of the games. But I could see them trying to do something similar. Hopefully they'll be able to figure out a workaround so that's not necessarily the case for those that do purchase that Xbox. But I have to believe that there's eventually going to be a time where, much like music can play on multiple devices, and I know that's a far different category because music is a listened item and you would hear it on either a portable listening device or a stationary listening device. The brands don't really have that significance other than maybe, a Sony artist song being played on a Sony device, but then it's not like it only plays there or it plays better there. It's just a matter of Sony gets money from you on the hardware and money from you on the music and stuff. But I eventually see games being able to be played in multiple places. And if it means that Sony, eases the strings as far as allowing that on tablets and PCs, great. If the next Xbox console tends to be kind of a PC console hybrid and you can play their games there as well, while the visual or on the surface, it may not be, ideal for Sony and as far as their brand, but I think they'll be happy with the 70% that they collected from that Steam customer that for whatever reason is playing it on their Xbox as well. But for those that have multiple devices at home, it just ultimately means you have more convenience, more options of where you can access your stuff. But I see that being the route of where things go. Maybe not full on this next generation, but by the generation after that, I think we'll be less focused on an actual console box, and it would be more so, well, which controller do you prefer? And the controllers will probably be, team green or team blue from there, just based on how you like your thumbstick positioning or your buttons, how they're labeled and so forth type of thing.
It's interesting when you see people in the chat like Furvar 458 says Avowed is a dead game. Is it though? I mean, sales have been good. The community literally the community's positivity drowned out boobs like you that have a false narrative about the game is dead. I would not be surprised for Verfar that if you were going to buy this on your PlayStation, if this was already announced, and I said this before, and I do honestly mean this game gets an additional 2 points from everyone if this is already announced for PS5. There's no doubt about it. And Xbox I guarantee you, Fuzzy, guys like this knucklehead in the chat here who thinks that he's going to last long as a troll, which I imagine he's already been snuffed out, come in and they make these silly statements. Is Avowed dead, chat? We got 510 people here. Is Avowed actually dead? Well, I mean, just go to social media because my timeline has been littered with positivity. And that's the congratulations that I actually started out with when this topic started.
See, I like Aries. I like Aries EMS's comment. It's like, if you want to talk about a dead game, talk about Concord. What about that?
How about Concord? I wouldn't even thought about that. Shout out to Aries EMS, who, by the way, has gifted 10 Double Barrel Gaming memberships. Damn, dude, that is crazy generous of you. Thank you once again. He's done that more times than I can remember to count. Aris_EMS, your generosity is greatly appreciated. Our good brother all the way from Hawaii, Nino Vistic, he is so cool and he's such a generous dude. He doesn't even say anything, but he's been a channel member for 16 months. Nino, welcome back, brother. Aloha to you and the family. But Fuzzy, we got to move on to the next topic, which, by the way, 3-Bit, I know you're in the chat, brother. It's great to see you here. Check your DM if you want to join us at 12:45 for the Indie Showcase. I sent you a link. It'd be me, Mav, Fuzzy, and yourself if you can join us. I do want to get into, of course, the big topic of the show, folks. And this one is exciting for me because There are a couple of points of contention worthy of a conversation here. Obviously, we've heard some things regarding what they're going to do, with Bethesda as a company, right? We know that they're going to continue with their, obviously Starfield is going to have an expansion supposedly this year. I would imagine we could look forward to that in September. I would even go far as to say, if that is ready to go, that we should see it in June, right? Well, we have a bunch of information here that comes the way of originally posted by Ecstasies. Now, Ecstasy, you've heard me mention his name multiple times. I know him personally. I'm a big fan of his work. He's been a guest multiple times on the show. When I tell you, folks, he is connected. Now, does he get everything right? No, none of us do. We get information. Sometimes we're allowed to divulge, and we do, and we get it wrong. And you know what we do as creators? We come out like men and be like, "Hey, listen, I said X, Y, and Z, and I was wrong. Information that was given to me, this is what I went with, and it wound up not being true." That happens. And like I said, it takes balls of steel to get in front of a camera and put yourself out there the same way it takes an inside source to give you that information to then put that out into the community. I'm sorry, it's not easy to do. And we do it, and sometimes we just get it wrong. Well, I'll be honest with you. Ecstasies gets it right way more than he gets it wrong. So, what have we heard, ladies and gentlemen? Well, apparently, the information coming from Ecstasies is that the Elder Scrolls 6 is going to take place in Hammerfell and High Rock. That is the two locations that are going to be mapped for this game that apparently, and this is where I have to back up Ecstasies. He has it in his write-up here that it should be releasing based on court documents and things that he has heard behind the scenes in 2026. Now, the reason why I can back him up is because through a separate person that I trust that has given me rock solid information, what I can talk about, he gave me two pieces, one of which blew my mind. Unfortunately, I can't reveal it and yet. Stand by, folks, because when I can, trust me, I'll be putting a video out. It's so big, I'll be doing actually a video to put it out there. But the other thing that he did tell me is that it could potentially, again, this is a rumor. He told me, take it as a rumor. This is what they have heard. We are going to get the first trailer for Elder Scrolls 6 this June. And that's exactly what Ecstasies heard from a separate source. Now, again, is it breaking any NDAs? No. Is it has people spoken about this before? Yes. This is what I've heard. I have not reached out to Ecstasies privately. I have in the past, not for this, because of where my source is. My source is rock solid. And they've gotten it right way more than they've gotten it wrong. So when they gave me these two pieces, one I could share, one I can't. One I can't, eventually I'll come back around to. But I have heard that we should potentially get the first reveal trailer this June. Not breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. I've heard this before, but I just got a confirmation of it from a particular source that remains unnamed. But that's not the only information that we have, Fuzzy. Thanks to Ecstasy and his several sources, the game is going to be set, obviously, in Hammerfell and High Rock. It will be 12 to 13 main cities. That's how big this game is going to be. That's massive, right? I don't even know how the heck you can finish that game with 12 to 13 main cities. Does that mean there's going to be like side towns you could run into? Like, you know what? It's a Bethesda joint, so maybe. Various islands to explore. Underwater exploration, which sounds like super interesting. I mean, you're going to be able to hold your breath. You're going to be a merman or something. You can go swim underneath. That's crazy, right? Like, I mean, I know you can do some swimming in Avowed, and I did find a charm that gives me not unlimited, but slows down my oxygen going away. I don't know if anyone else found that, but it's incredibly handy. Do not sell it. Apparently, according to Ecstasies, dragons, in fact, will return. To what extent, I don't know. I have potentially seen online that you might be able to mount these dragons at some point, which would be dope for traversing these large maps. That would be kind of cool. Apparently, there are going to be naval battles in this. Shipbuilding inspired by Starfield. Fortress and village building inspired by Fallout. I don't like it. I'm not going to use that. I may build like a plank to kind of get the achievement, and after that, I'm not going to build anything. I didn't like the Fallout 4 buildings. I'm sorry. The progression system, according to Exasees, will be changed, abandoning classes for a more natural system. That's very interesting because I enjoy the classes, but I am going to say, after playing Avowed, I find it hard to pick a class and stay there because I originally picked fighter and I went all wizard and I was able to respec. I hope they have that option. I think it really has to become the standard on letting the player choose their own path, even if that path changes at some point during the game, Fuzzy. So it goes on to say the game will be more immersive. It's going to have, this is cool. I like this, ladies and gentlemen, and it's probably because of the hardware, faster loading times. Yes, we're saved, right? The last 3 points of context are the game might be at the Xbox showcase and he said July. He meant June in 2025. The FTC leaks has the game set to release no earlier than 2026. And finally, and this is going to change as we get closer, but according to Exasees, and I heard this as well, the game has only been confirmed for both PC and Xbox so far. No confirmation for Switch 2 or PS5 Pro. Okay, that comes the way of Exasees. Fuzzy, this is big news. And it's big news, and I have some additional context, folks. So does anyone want to know how long they've been working on this game? I mean, and throw it in there because we're in 2025, right? Mm-hmm. How long have they been working on this game? Well, interestingly enough, here's a tweet that I pulled from March 29th, 2019, ladies and gentlemen. Now, everyone knows who Skyrim Grandma is, right? Like, that lady is freaking awesome. She's a grandma who plays Skyrim like that's her thing, right? Mm-hmm. That's her call to fame. Well, her name is Shirley Curry. And apparently, and this article comes the way of Kotaku, she has been scanned in. She is going to be an NPC in the Elder Scrolls 6. That was confirmed by Kotaku. But here's something that's very interesting. So Hazardor Gaming, one of the finest in the community, and he's up there with, of course, Clobriel is another fantastic member of the community. Nico Muller, constantly putting stuff out there, as well as Okami13_. Amazing people that you should be following on Twitter because they constantly talk about amazing gaming news. They don't use hate rhetoric and any of the stuff that they do. They just talk about gaming news. Well, Hazardor Gaming actually posted this last year, March 25th, 2024, more specifically. Now, on his particular tweet, it was that day happened to be the 30th anniversary of the Elder Scrolls franchise, and Bethesda shares an update to Elder Scrolls 6. And I don't know specifically who is this from. I believe it was from Todd Howard. He said, playing an early version of the game fills us with the same joy, excitement, and promise of adventure. Well, there you go, folks. They're playing an early build of Elder Scrolls 6. Now, mind you, from what I understand, development started for this well even before 2019. That means they've been working on the game for over 6 years. That 2026 release date actually might be a thing when you consider how long it's been in development. Let's get your thoughts on the information from Exasees, and what are your thoughts, man?
I've kind of always been under the assumption that there was a team working on Elder Scrolls while they were mainly all hands on deck for Starfield. It's just that it wasn't in, like a few people in the chat mentioned, it wasn't in full production. They always have kind of like a smaller team start things up as far as get the groundwork, work on some of the storyboards, work on some of the environments and sketches and stuff like that. Much like I'm pretty sure that there was stuff at least a year or two ago, as far as for Fallout 5, kind of in scratch works kind of thing. Early prototypes and things like that. But to my understanding, even based on the leaks from when some of the stuff from the court case came out about what Bethesda's roadmap looked like, Elder Scrolls 6 was meant to be somewhere around 2 years after the release of Starfield. So they could still be on track with that, with a 2026 release, given a little bit extra time for polishing and whatnot. I would not be surprised if this thing is 2026, but considering you're hearing more and more, even though some of these things, they've been, talked about maybe a year or two ago, we're getting this ramp up of more leaks or more info about a game. And typically when you get that, that means the game is usually within 2 years, sometimes sooner, depending on how they're going to introduce us to it. I don't think we'll see it where, hey, it's at the June showcase and it winds up being released later this year. I don't think it's quite like what Bethesda would normally have done with their release cadence.
They actually did that with Fallout 4, if you remember. Like I was literally in the audience. That was, I believe, 2019, where they actually said, "Hey, listen, here's the trailer." And it's coming out 6 months later. Like that blew my mind. Like I couldn't believe it. But yeah, that was they don't do that very often though.
Yeah, I think now with Microsoft kind of being a little bit more hands off in the sense of giving them more time. It's like, you don't have to rush this out. There's no real quote unquote deadline. Yes, we would like to have it in this window, but if it takes more time to polish, I think Starfield is a perfect example. Did it release bug free? No, but it's probably been Bethesda's least buggy game that they've ever released. And, considering, some of the updates and things since then, it's gone through a whole plethora of polishing, although it was pretty solid from the launch. So I would say when it comes to Elder Scrolls 6, I'm still on board for, let's say, fall of 2026, especially if GTA 6 winds up releasing in 25, but I still think that gets pushed to 26. I know they've made a statement that they're on track for 2025, but we'll see how all of that plays out. But yeah, Elder Scrolls 6, I think the big thing is, since that's using I forget the name of the engine, but it's like the version 2 of that engine. Well, Starfield was the main one doing that. Since they've already got that engine in place or updates to that engine from Starfield, then it makes it a little bit easier for the transition over to Elder Scrolls. So we'll see. Hopefully at the June showcase, full on trailer. I don't think we get the deep dive. Maybe we get the deep dive at the Xbox Developer Direct next February or next June or January, I should say. But I have to believe where there's smoke, there's fire. And now that we're getting some more smoke signals about this game, it's probably closer than a lot of people think. And
the name of the engine is the Creation Engine 2, is what they use for Starfield, and what they apparently are going to use, or a modified version of it, more advanced version of it for Elder Scrolls 6.
Yeah, so it makes the development time from Starfield to that a little less hectic. It's not like they have to, build it from scratch or do like what they did from Fallout 4 to Starfield, where that creation engine had to go through its glow up, I guess you could say, for Starfield. So I'm pretty confident we'll see something this year, and then hopefully next year we get a release date, possibly late in the year or close to holiday next year. So we'll see.
Well, I mean, listen, there's a lot that we have to talk about still. We will, of course, we're limited time today simply because, I'm going to be back here with Fuzzy, 3-Bit, and Mav at 12:45 to cover the IGN Indie event, which I think is going to have a lot of really good games to show off. Some of which are going to be in the Xbox Game Pass day and date, some of which are not. And that's fine. If there's something that's interesting, I will happily purchase it. But I do want to just say that when you consider, Fuzzy, and I said this in the opening, how many studios Xbox owns, but more specifically, when it comes to Western RPG studios, they own Bethesda. They obviously own Obsidian, and In Exile is another one. They're the outlier here because we know that their time traveling game is around the corner. I believe it's this year. I think it's going to be one of those games that Matt Booty specifically made mention of. That hey, we have stuff that that could release this year that we haven't shown off. Well, they only showed off one trailer, and that trailer looked really really polished. In Exile is another phenomenal Western RPG developer, and they own all three of them. And at this point, look, of course, all of us want Elder Scrolls 6 to come out next year. Who doesn't want another epic RPG, right? Could you imagine, that game follows 2025 where you have Avowed, and on the back end of the year, and I'm saying back end of the year because it makes sense to bookend it, you have the Outer Worlds 2. I mean, wow, talk about a lineup. And again, this is, like I said, I know that this is all hypothetical, folks, what I'm about to say, but if you consider how important 2026 is for Xbox, there are a couple of big anniversaries there, right? It's the 25th anniversary of the actual platform. You also have the 25th anniversary of Master Chief and Combat Evolved. You also happen to have the 20th anniversary of Gears of War, right? So, I mean, it's a pretty awesome storybook type of moment for them if they could release hardware, one of which could be the handheld, one of which could be this magic box underneath the TV. You could get Forza Horizon 6, which I don't know who did the poll about where do you want to see Forza next. Of course, I am so passionate about them going to Japan. I made a thumbnail on my phone, which is awesome, and I actually put it out there, said, yeah, it's got to go to Japan. Could you imagine, like, next year, folks? And again, we'll come back around to this conversation because 2026 is going to be a monster-sized year. We still don't know what's happening second half of 25, which is bonkers, right? Like, the Oblivion remake is it, folks, it's real. I'm telling you, it's real. I've heard some things I'm not going to talk about, but we should get something soon. How soon? A lot sooner than you possibly could imagine. That's all I will say about that. And that in itself is just madness. You got Avowed, you get a remake, not a remaster. You got a remake in Unreal Engine 5 of one of Bethesda's best. Let's call a spade. That is, Oblivion is one of my favorite RPGs of all time. And on the back end of that year, the same year that you got Avowed, and you got this masterclass level game from Bethesda, you get the Outer Worlds. Bro, I'm here to tell you, folks, if you think that Xbox gamers are losing, you are someone cast a madness spell on you. You need to go and get that worked out because that's just crazy. But listen, shout out to Brett Bingham is in the chat. Thanks for being here, Brett. Super appreciate it. I talk to Brett pretty much, I think, like 5 or 6 times a day in DMs. Good friend of the show. But listen, we're almost at the end of the show. Again, it's a little bit shorter. I didn't want to race through the topics. I think we've already said everything that we need to say. I will say that we are coming back at 12:45. It's going to be an extended version of the Xbox lunch break special to cover the IGN indie event, which is going to be big. I think they're going to have some really big releases there. Fingers crossed we get something Miles Morales. I think that'd bring down the whole house. I think I'm going to be heartbroken because someone was like, "Boom, I got to be honest with you. That was probably just like an IGN intern that threw it in there," and they're probably right. They're probably right. I'm probably making a whole molehill out of a mountain, or a mountain out of a molehill for this. But I'm still excited for it. Shout out to Joe Dunmore. Joe, glad to see you here, brother. Listen, again, we're going to be back at 12:45. We're going to take a little bit of a break. And Fuzzy, look, I know we're going to sell you brand on the back end of the other show, but we got to sell it here. You and your missus each have your own YouTube channel, which I think is absolutely cool as F. And I want to see you guys, continue to grow. So by all means, not only can tell people where they can follow you guys on the socials to keep up to date where your content is coming from, but more importantly, where they can subscribe to your channel, which of course is the best place for anything and everything in the racing genre. And of course, Fright Night with Ferocious Fee, which is a horror-based podcast, Friday evening, 6 p.m. Yeah, brother, tell everyone they can subscribe.
Well, as always, appreciative of being on this podcast with you, Boom. Love doing the breaking news stuff as well as just talking about games in general. Love interacting with the people in the chat, even the trolls. But yeah, this was an awesome like warm up. Looking forward to ID at Xbox here in like the next half hour or so. Definitely grab your popcorn, guys. I think we're going to see some special games. I'm looking forward to what is it? The Immortals 33 or 33 Immortals. That's the one I really want to dive into, although I got to finish Avowed first. But for those that want to hear all of my rambles and rants on anything gaming related, just do a search for Fuzzy Belvedere or Fuzzy_Belvedere. You can find my YouTube channel as well as all my social accounts and stuff. But if you're into horror games, horror movies, definitely do a look up for Ferocious Fee or Fright Night with Ferocious Fee. The link is in the chat. Last week or last Friday, we talked about Humane, which was kind of like a purge movie, but like self-volunteering, I guess. Pretty interesting, more of a thriller than a true horror kind of film, but we always like mix it up as far as different movies to talk about. Love having people in the chat. If you guys check out the movie, not sure what the one is for this Friday, but I'll definitely make a post on social media for it. If you guys can check it out, we greatly appreciate it. And as always, hit that like button, subscribe to here if you haven't already. We greatly appreciate it as well. Thanks again.
Well, speaking of which, the new commercial starring myself and my nephew for the official Double Barrel Gaming Volare pillow has been, I just gave Sean Labrie the thumbs up. It's 30 seconds. I'll be unveiling that at some point this week. It is dope. So I'm very excited. Again, we got a pillow, folks. It's crazy to even say that we actually have our own branded pillow with a company. Of course, we're going to start playing that at least once or twice a week to kind of get people to, consider getting it because the pillow does work. But again, for me and Fuzz Belvedere, we want to thank you so much for taking the time for hanging out with us here. Again, we'll be back at 12:45 for the ID at Xbox. And if you're wondering why I'm covering an IGN event, and I know some people in the chat like, yeah, IGN. Yeah, I agree, IGN, but this is not it. They're happen to be working with Xbox. This is an ID at Xbox event, and all of those games are indies. And listen, I want to cover them because I really do appreciate the indies, especially when you start hearing some of the stories behind them. It's great that people can actually get out there and not be these AAA bomb makers, and they put out these games that we all know and love, and they're from sometimes as like one person makes a game. Who doesn't want to support that person? But again, I'm going to close the show with something that's incredibly important to me. Hopefully one day, folks, will be important to you, and that's something that my dad taught us when we were kids. And it would say, Craig, treat others how you want to be treated, and also it doesn't cost anything to be nice. You live by those rules, son. I can guarantee you're going to have an awesome day. So take care, everyone. And we'll see you in about 30 minutes. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks again.